What's going on, GameLeapers? This is Coach Cheeks, and in today's upload, we're going to be talking about the 10 best top laners for patch 12.12. And because I'm such a nice guy, I'm also going to give you the rune page, the builds, the skill orders, everything you need to play these champions at the highest level. So make sure you stick around for the whole video for all that juicy information. But just before we do get into the video, one thing you guys have to do before you get into your next game is to download the Porofessor app linked in the description, because it allows you to quickly import the best rune page used from the best players in the world on the champion you're picking. You don't have to make the rune page, just one click of a button and bang, you're ready to go. But that's not all, because the app also allows you to scout your opponent, and the app will give you their stats, how well they play their champion, so you can know more about your opponent than they know about themselves. And the app also gives you an in-game overlay, so you can compare your CSing, your kill participation to your rank, or even challenger players like Faker. And there's a reason why 3 million people have downloaded this free application, guys. It's because it works. So get around it in Season 12. Those links are in the description. Now, starting off the countdown at number 10, we have a champion who started off the durability meta in the strongest position possible, and this was Kayle. But Kayle has dropped off a little bit just because there are so many other champions that have been buffed or have just been even stronger. And because bruisers and fighters, there are lots in this countdown, do very well against Kayle, it means that her power, well, you really have to pick her in the right situation. So objectively speaking, she can't really be like the best top laner, but she is definitely one of the best because of her power with lethal tempo, the durability meta making her laning phase a little easier to get out of, because once you hit 11 and 16, in terms of levels of course, that's when you can start to dominate. So Kayle starts off the countdown at number 10. Now beating her to number 9 is a champion who's getting changed in 12.12, this being Fiora. And for Fiora in 12.11, so the previous patch and pretty much for the whole of Season 12, she has been an insane champion. So in 12.12, Riot have decided to nerf the true damage in your passive, going from 3% to 2%. Now during the laning phase, this will actually mean something. During the late game though, it will amount to a small amount of damage, and that's the thing. Most games are going to go to the late game, so we might be talking around 20-25 minutes onwards, which is when Fiora is really good, and this nerf will have minimal impact at that stage in a game. So her laning phase will be weaker, but she still has the tools to navigate out of the laning phase and even win the laning phase, because she counters so many champions in the top lane, and that's also probably why she's banned a heck of a lot. So Fiora will still be very good, that's why she's number 9. But beating her to number 8 on the countdown is one of the best Divine Summoner abusers on the Rift, this being Camille. And because of the extra HP in the game, especially from 12.11, with all of the buffs to the tank mythics giving you more HP, think about that for Camille. With the Spellblade passive from Sundra, and then you add on the true damage from your Q2, you are scissoring more people to death. But you do have to be a little bit careful picking Camille, because your laning phase is not as strong as some of the other champions on this countdown. So in the early game, you do have to be a little bit careful, but as long as you hit the 10-15 minute mark and get to your Divine Sundra spike, you should be good to go. You outscale so many champions, if not every champion, maybe apart from Kayle, in the top lane, so Camille fills the number 8 position. But she's beaten to number 7 by, well, kind of a similar champion, this being Riven. And we haven't talked that much about Riven in the durability meta, but the fact is this, really ever since Goredrinker got buffed a couple of patches ago in terms of the ability haste you're getting from the mythic passive, this has really helped Riven, because like I said earlier guys, most games are going to go past 20-25 minutes, right? So for Riven, when you get to that stage in a game with 2 to 3 items, the ability haste from Goredrinker kicks in, and ability haste for Riven along with attack damage, these are the 2 most important stats. So when one of these gets buffed, Riven gets buffed as a result. So this is why she's climbed back into the top 10, even if Goredrinker isn't the most amazing mythic item in the world, because Divine Sundra is certainly better, and in this meta in team fights where you're trying to jump into Zeris with Yumis on them, you can get kited very easily, and therefore Goredrinker, like, you know, it's not going to have much value. But just because of that ability haste buff, and Riven being a very good 1v1er, that's what you're really playing for in the late game, so she's at number 7. But she's beaten to number 6 by the strongest AP champion in the top lane at the moment, this being Mordekaiser. And even with the Riftmaker nerf, the AP going down by 10 a bit like Kayle, Mordekaiser has still proven to be a very OP champion, and to be honest, it's really been the case since 12.8, where Riot decided to buff his bonus movement speed so it scales with your levels. And why is that so important? Well, because this meta is really all about scaling. It's about getting to the late game. Once again, I sound like a broken record, but those are the facts. And Mordekaiser, because he does so well in the late game with Riftmaker, with Rylai's, your consistent damage, your DPS, it's very hard to deal with. And because in lower eloads, lots of players might not have the mechanical capacity to deal with Mordekaiser, because he is kind of skill shot based, so landing your E followed by your Q, even poking the enemy champion with your Q, it's going to work a lot more in lower elos. So that's why Mordekaiser struggles a little bit more in higher elos, but he's still such a strong champion overall, so this is why he's got to be in this video. Now starting off the top 5, well, we're actually going to talk about one of the strongest junglers. Well, he's more known for jungling, this being Wukong. And ever since Riot buffed him earlier in the season, Wukong has really taken off in the top lane as well. The main reason for this being the buff to Wukong's Q, because this being on such a lower cooldown, once you get to level 9, you can just absolutely unleash on the competition. Also, we should take into consideration here Wukong's passive, which makes him an incredibly strong early game champion, because while you're fighting, you're getting more armor. It's very hard to deal with, because most champions in the top lane are going to be attack damage based, so Wukong's very good in this regard. Just make sure to take your E at level 1, because we want to be fighting as much as possible. The attack speed's really useful as well to stack your Conqueror, and interestingly enough here, with the attack speed, we're taking Alacrity, which might seem like overkill, but the reason for this is because we're taking 2 adaptive force in our runes. So we do need a little bit more attack speed, even though we do get some from our Nimbus Strike. Alacrity just feels so good, but of course you can consider going Tenacity if you're against a team composition with lots of CC. So Wukong starts off the top 5 at number 5. Now boasting the number 4 position, this is a champion who absolutely thrives in lower levels of play, this being Tahm Kench. And because of the buffs last patch to your Q, to your passive in particular, Tahm Kench is slowly taking over the top lane. But not only that guys, because we also have to factor in here the buff to Balmy Cinder, so it's only 1,000 gold now, super easy to get in the early game, and once you get this, you're very oppressive. And because the tank mythics, Frostfire Gauntlet in particular, is giving you an extra 100 HP now, and when you think about Frostfire's passive, which is giving you extra HP for each major item you have, this is significant. It's a huge buff to Kench, which is why in Platinum and above at the moment, he has over a 53% win rate. This is definitely not going to change next patch because there are no nerfs to Tahm Kench or his items or runes or anything like that, so he's still going to be Giga OP, so the Kench has been unbenched. This is why he's number 4. But he has been to number 3, and we talked about Wukong being one of the strongest early game champions. Well, here's another one, this being Olaf. And Olaf, yes, the W shield nerf hurt him, the armor reduction nerf in his Q, this hurt him as well, but the point is this, Olaf is still incredibly good. Now, you might not have the scaling of these other champions, but who is going to beat Olaf in lane? Like, unless you pick something like Vayne or a ranged champion, which is kind of a specialty, not many people can actually play those champions well top lane, Olaf is going to have a field day. He's going to do whatever he wants, win top lane, and then take over a game. The buffs in the last few patches to his Q, where the base damage has gone up, these have been insane for Olaf. Just please take Ghost Ignite, guys, in your games, because you're all about winning lane. 2 combat summoner spells, it's becoming way more popular at the moment, of course, because teleport, it's different, it's nowhere near as good in the early game, so you want 2 combat summoner spells to stomp the enemy champion, and of course remember to take approach velocity in your runes, because we want this to work when you land your Q, and when you pair this with Ghost, they're going to die. But if Olaf is starting off the top 3, who on earth can be better than that champion? Well, the first of these, this is Jax, the runner-up for the 12.12 best top laners, and Jax is really here, well, because if we think about it, how can he not be? With Divine Sundra, the more HP in the game, shreds tanks, a bit like Camille in this sense, but the difference between Jax and Camille is that Jax has way more DPS, so as soon as a fight starts, he can go doof doof doof, whereas Camille, you have to play around your cooldowns a lot more. So Jax with the attack speed if you're going Bork, but even the attack speed in his passive, lethal tempo, that will suffice. This is why in terms of the best builds for Jax, when you go Divine Sundra, you can follow this with a Frozen Heart, because the best attack damage carries at the moment are champions like Twitch, Zeri, Kog'Maw, they're attack speed based. So for Jax, Frozen Heart being so cheap as well is a super important buy. The ability haste too, really important, because Jax loves ability haste as well, so Jax is the second best top laner for 12-12, but he is beaten to number 1 by Darius, who is banned in almost 20% of games in Platinum and above, because people understand, guys, that this champion is just straight up broken in this meta. We talked about Jax having consistent DPS, well, you haven't seen anything until you run into a Darius in the top lane. This champion is frightening to play against, because if you make one mistake, you are going to die, and because tanks are more popular and Darius completely wrecks them, you can never really blind pick any of those champions unless Darius is bad. Even in high reloads where Darius might struggle a little bit more, because the champion does have some annoying champions he might have to deal with in the top lane, he is still regarded at least as an S tier champion. So Darius across the board, guys, doesn't matter what elo you're playing in, super broken. That's why he's number 1 on the countdown, and those were the 10 best top laners for 12-12. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you did enjoy it, please remember to leave a like down below, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future Season 12 content, and until tomorrow's upload, this has been Coach Cheese.